Hey, listen, today we're making Vietnamese coffee using the Phin, hot or iced, here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to the Obus Lab. Hey, listen, today we're talking about the Phin coffee maker. It's from Vietnam. But the idea of this episode came from my stepmom, Katie. And she had sent me an article on the Phin, and she said this: I read this article in Sunset Magazine. I know you are an expert on coffee, but I found this Vietnamese coffee recipe interesting. Thanks, Katie. And of course, I already had a Phin coffee maker, and I love the Phin method. I'm not following this recipe today, but I'm going to definitely review how to use a Phin, or sometimes it's called Phin coffee maker, depending. It's a percolation method, and it's really simple to use, and frankly, I think it makes excellent coffee. Now, there are 4 parts to the Phin, and there's this filter plate, and you can see that that's perforated. And then there's the brew chamber, and that's perforated also, so that's perforation on perforation. And then there's this gravity plate, and that'll go on the inside. And then there's this lid, but it can also be sort of a coaster when you're done.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty convenient. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started on it. It's pretty traditional to do it in a glass jar, and I'm going to make this coffee, this Vietnamese coffee, hot first, and then show you the iced method right afterwards using the same product. I'm going to go ahead and take the cork off here, and we're going to get this right on top of the glass. I'm going to take out the gravity plate, and we have to grind some coffee. So let me get our trusty scale out, and we need our scale in order to measure the right amount of coffee. Get that to a zero, get it zeroed out. What's the right terminology?
You tear it out.
Tear it out,
yeah.
right? And everybody's always like, what does tear mean?
What the heck?
Don't
Yeah.
tear it. But it's safe. And we're gonna load in here 24 grams of coffee, except I think I didn't tear it out. Let me see.
No, you did.
Oh, I did. Okay. Whew. Here we go. Let's keep on going. We're going to do 24 grams of coffee. Now that's going to be
11.
to 200.
17 and a half.
All right, so it's getting close.
22.7.
All right.
Start counting beans now. 25.8.
There we go. I'm using our espresso blend, and we don't sell that in the grocery store. You could easily get it at a BIGGBY coffee, and it looks like a really big bag because it is a really big bag. There, is that perfect?
It's perfect.
Yeah. So it's espresso blend, and I stole it out of the local Saugatuck BIGGBY coffee. I didn't really steal it, I bought it, but we're going to use 24 grams of coffee, and that's going to be to 200 grams of water, 200 milliliters of water. And what you'll note about that is normally we use 6 grams per 100. And so we're going almost double. It's 12 grams per 100, because this is closer to like a mocha pot or an espresso kind of extraction, that kind of strength. Okay. We always like to spritz the beans a little bit, and that takes away the static.
It sure
right?
does.
That's
Works
right.
every time.
Works every time. And then the setting on the Baratza is closer to 10 or 12. In other words, we're getting close to an AeroPress, something between an AeroPress and an espresso blend, so pretty fine. And I'm going to go ahead and grind that up. But I'm not going to make us go through the torture of listening to the grind. I've already pre-ground some coffee, and that's ready to go right here. Now, I always like, in any scenario, to preheat, because we're about 68 degrees in here, and this is pretty cold to the touch, and this is pretty cold to the touch. So I'm going to get some hot water. Our hot water's at about 190 degrees. I'm just going to pour it in the chamber. And you can see that it will actually drip through pretty slowly,
Yeah.
right? So it's a surprise, right? We had that that product called the Pure Over that was an all glass mechanism, right? And we'll put a link to that up in the corner here. But it takes a while for it to drip through, and it's that double perforation that makes that happen. But it's good that we preheat these various parts, because otherwise when we pour our water in, the coffee would get cold almost right away. So our 24 grams of coffee go in, and we're going to give it a shake to level it out. Put our gravity piece in there. Now at this point I'm going to pull up the scale, get this on, and tear it out, because we're going to put 200 milliliters of water in. That's 200 grams of water. A milliliter and a gram are the same from a water perspective. And so I'm going to start with putting 50 grams in. And I have to read that upside down, so you might have to help me a little bit.
40,
okay.
45, 46.
46, so we'll get a little bit more in there.
50.
And you guys know this part. This is really the bloom, right? And so, but also for this particular coffee, what we're trying to do is get all the grounds damp. And so I want you to think about like an indoor plant that hasn't been watered for a long time. You would never just pour a whole bunch of water in. The first thing you would do is pour a little bit of water in and let the soil absorb the water. Otherwise, if you poured all the water in, it would practically just run through like it was going through sand. Same is true with this coffee right here. So our first 50 grams are in, and now we're going to pour the balance of 200. Did I say 250?
You did.
Because it's 200. And I know you're watching this a little bit.
Yeah. 150, 160, 170,
A lot of
180,
pressure.
190, 200, and 1.2.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. Now what you'll note is it's dripping through, and we want this to drip through in about, I should have set the timer. I didn't. In about 3.5 to 5 minutes, right? So we're going to have to pretend that there's about a minute on this already. So whatever time we're looking at, we're going to have to add a minute onto this. But if it went through too quickly, the thing to know is you would want to make your grind a little bit finer. And if it went through too slowly, like it took 7 or 8 minutes, you would know you would need your grind to be a little bit coarser. And so, like so many coffee methods, pour over or what have you, the ground and the size of the ground is what controls the flow rate on it altogether, right? So what are we at right now?
42 seconds.
So technically we're at a minute and 42 seconds. Now we're going to put the lid on because it's going to help keep the temperature in there, right? And we're going to let that drip through slowly. So, you know, one of the things I want to say about the Phin or the Phin is that it is a product of Vietnam, but it was heavily influenced by the French presence there. You know, it was a colonial country at one point in time. And the French brought the idea of consuming coffee to Vietnam. But it was the Vietnamese that sort of invented this method of doing it. And what's beautiful about it is, you know, so many times in coffee production, we're looking at a way to not use a paper filter or something like that, right? So everybody knows that Michelle and I love the cone filter, right? We use the cone filter in our Mocha Master. We use the cone filter even
in our Chemex.
In our Chemex, almost anywhere we can, because we're not throwing paper away on a regular basis. But another method, and in some ways this method is very close, is the mocha pot, right? Now the mocha pot works on a little bit more pressure. The coffee is a little bit finer, but from a strength perspective, they're very similar. This too doesn't use any paper. Now, this is a percolation method. This would be a percolation method. This is a percolation method. The French press, and you've seen our Frank Green video, and if you haven't, we'll put it up in the corner here. As a matter of fact, we'll put the mocha pot up in the corner too. But the French press is another method where you don't use paper, right? Okay, but this is an immersion method. It's a slightly different method than a percolation method. All right, so what are we at? 2 minutes.
2 minutes and 25 seconds.
Which is really?
3 minutes and 30 seconds
Okay,
now.
so we're getting to the bottom end of where it could be done.
Yeah, and you can really see it slowing down.
It is slowing down, but if I take a peek in it, and you can come, maybe you can get up here and see, it still has a ways to go in there, right? And it's this slow drip method that creates such a beautiful extraction. Now, here's one fact about Vietnam that I just don't think people know. And that is Vietnam is the world's second largest producer of coffee. So the world's largest producer of coffee is Brazil. But Brazil is this huge country that's about 2/3 the size of the United States. And Vietnam is just this little sliver of a country. So for it to be the second largest producer out of all the coffee producing countries out there is really quite amazing. I would say the Vietnamese are particularly industrious folks, and they do a beautiful job of producing coffee. But the one thing about it is, you know, there's two kinds of coffee out there. There's Arabica and there's Robusta. Most of the Vietnamese coffee is Robusta, right? Now, it's a different species of coffee. Is it a worse kind of coffee? Not at all. It grows lower down the mountain, gets more full sun, so it grows a little bit faster. It also has a higher caffeine content. Often, though, Robusta is associated with a lower grade coffee, but there are very good Robustas and there can be bad Arabicas. So the kind of coffee that's coming out of Vietnam right now is getting better and better all the time.
Isn't Robusta used in a lot of espresso blends?
Well, Robusta can be used in an espresso blend as part of the blend. Blend means there's more than one kind of bean in there, of course. And the assets that it adds, of course, is a little bit more acid. But one of the beautiful things Robusta coffee does is it really enhances the crema, that light brown foam that comes out when you make an espresso. So, how are we doing on time?
Oh boy, we're at 4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes.
Which means 5.5 minutes.
No, for sure. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this particular product is it's all metal. There's no plastic in this, right? And so this product, this Phin, will last you a lifetime. It doesn't matter when you buy it. I mean, unless you run it over with your car or something like that, this can last you forever and ever and ever. Okay, what I'm going to do is short end this, but if this was the morning time, you would be happy to let this drip in front of you and have that perfect extraction. But I'm going to pull this off a little bit soon and say this is a Vietnamese coffee at this point. It's a hot extraction. Now, it's a strong tasting product, right? So if I take a sip of this, it's going to have it's going to have the strength of a mocha pot, or it's going to have the strength of an espresso. It's a very strong cup of coffee. And you could drink it just like this. You could add a little milk. You can actually turn it into an Americano by just filling up the balance of the glass with some hot water, and that would bring it to about drip coffee strength. If you wanted to have a little fun and there were some people that you were entertaining, you could take a couple of espresso cups. Now, this is not espresso, and you could pour these off and serve it as or similar to espresso.
Like a cheater's espresso.
Like a cheater's espresso. We have some cheaters. We'll put one of the cheater's espresso methods up there. Well, we have the mocha pot up there already, so we'll see. Okay, the most traditional way to drink Vietnamese coffee, though, is iced, right? And it's still served in a glass, and almost always Vietnamese coffee is served in a glass. But when it's served ice, there's something that you put in the bottom of the glass, and I don't know if you can see, there's about 1/3 of an inch in the bottom of the glass there of something that's called sweetened condensed milk. And what's in here? Milk and sugar, right? Which are not foreign ingredients to a cup of coffee at all, right? And we just pop the top of a can, and we pour in about 30 milliliters. And 30 milliliters, for those that need to know, would be about 2 tablespoons, right? 1 tablespoon is 15 mils. You can see that right there. But normally we would have this Phin just sitting right on top of this sweetened condensed milk. We're going to just instead pour this right on top. And what you'll need, of course, is a spoon to blend this up. Now, why sweetening condensed milk? Why would that have been the product? Well, you know, in a lot of countries it didn't have refrigeration for the longest period of time. The way you got dairy to somebody was to put it in a can and preserve it, right? And so sweetened condensed milk did not require refrigeration at all. All right, well, that's good and stirred up. And, you know, if you were concerned about the calorie count or the milk in the sweetened condensed milk, you could always use another product, and that is just some organic coconut milk. Now, you might need to add a little sugar because this is not a sweetened product. And I wouldn't use coconut milk, you know, that very runny version. You want the all-fat version if you're going to make this particular product. Okay. So at this point, you would just add copious amounts of ice. And it would be really good if they were big ice cubes all together. There's a nice big one. And this would, in the climate of Vietnam, which would be tropical and subtropical, this would be an amazingly refreshing drink. You would get it at a roadside, street-side cafe. And, you know, this is made in home, this is made in cafe, and a super popular drink all throughout Vietnam. And I'm going to go ahead and take a sip, and then, babe, yep. Oh my God, that's great. I want you to take a sip too, but you got to imagine it's about 90 degrees and 90% humidity outside, and you're outside and drinking this.
That is so good.
It is so good.
You know, there have been a number of coffee candies that we've liked.
Oh, yeah.
And that almost tastes like liquid coffee candy.
Coffee candy in a glass, absolutely. Well, I need to thank my stepmom for reminding me about the Phin. It's been a long time since I used it. It is a favorite way of making coffee for me. And I love the iced Vietnamese coffee. But at this point in time, I need to leave you with this one note. And that note is, when you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by One Bigg Island in space.com with 2 G's.